You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear.
Hey, welcome back, Shoe and Show listeners. We are glad that you're here. I'm your host today, Matt Priest, and I'm very excited about today's conversation. For those of you who've been listening to this show for a long time, we cranked this out in June of 2016. We've had a lot of hours and hours of conversation since. You might know that I'm a runner, and in my personal life, I like to run. I run, anywhere from 325 miles to 400 miles a year. And, I'm casual. I'm not a marathoner. I don't go crazy, but I hit the ground 3 or 4 miles every few days here in my neighborhood. And I thought to myself, you know what? I've got this platform. There's some really cool experts out there that have a lot of great information on the industry as a whole and then on running in particular. And I thought to myself, why not kind of be selfish and craft my own episode on an issue that I care about personally, using my job to do it. And so you're along for the ride as a listener, because I'm very excited that we have Matt Field here today, who is co-founder and president of MakerSights. Matt, you have a great name, if I do say so myself. Thank you for coming on Shoe and Show, my friend, and welcome to our program.
Matt, pleasure to join you. Excited for this conversation, and I'm impressed at the mileage you're racking up. I wish I was doing that, but hopefully some of the insights we share will be useful to the Shoe In listeners.
Yeah, for sure. You're too busy working and gathering those insights. So why don't we unpack them, right? So talk to our listeners about, what is MakerSights? What do you guys do?
Yeah.
What's your bread and butter?
Yeah, so we are a modern research company. We focus on the apparel, footwear, and accessory spaces, and we provide our brand partners with consumer insights that de-risk the big, critical product and assortment decisions that they make across their calendar. We support everything from product creation and sort of new category or new white space exploration that they might be doing, right through to assortment planning and assortment optimization. Think about, as brands are thinking through how to optimize the line and make the line as productive as possible, whether that's at a global or a regional level, right through to as they bring product to market, helping that be as effective and informed as possible, whether that's for their own channels or their relationships with key retailers. Part of the reason we're so excited to talk about Run is we have a real density of customers in the run space. We work with brands like Hoka and ASICS and New Balance and Reebok and tons of other brands in the footwear space. But run is a big category for us. And my co-founder and I and a lot of our team are pretty passionate runners. I'm lucky I live on the West Coast in the Bay Area, so I get to do my fair share of trail running. And just a sector we're all really passionate about.
That's a beautiful place to be a runner for sure. I have a Nordic track that I run on when I'm not running outside. I live in the Northern Virginia, DC area. And oftentimes I select those places in California, San Francisco, San Diego, that I can run through them virtually at least, So I'm there with you in spirit. Now, Matt, those are some really amazing brands that you talked about: Hoka, New Balance, ASICS, Reebok. Run is having a moment right now, and we see all these specialty running. I throw it on into the conversation, but these specialty running companies that are really seeing some growth, some opportunity. They're really capturing the minds of consumers. Why do you think that is? Before we dive deeper into your research from the run perspective, what do you think is kind of making these run companies stand apart?
Yeah, so I think there's kind of two things I'll focus on in my answer to that. One is this is dating back. I can't believe it's 4.5 years now. But at the start of the pandemic, there was not shortly after the sort of shock factor of and in some ways panic of a global pandemic set in. The stay-at-home orders created a real moment of kind of need and opportunity for people like you and me to sort of get some mental relief and to get outside. It was one of the few safe things that you were, or relatively safe things that you were allowed to do. And on the back of that, we saw a real explosion in both running and outdoor as categories of activity, as categories of interest. And you saw a real growth in the number of participants in both of those categories. I would say obviously that trend is continued, and while hopefully it looks like the pandemic is in the rearview mirror, you're still seeing a real appetite and introduction of a whole host of new segments. Novice runners, people who maybe running once a week or even less than once a week, doing 2 or 3 miles, but the appetite to sort of be outside has kind of continued unabated. And so that growth in participation, is something that we've seen like really continue, pretty much on the same upward trajectory for the last 4 years. The other thing that we're seeing is as hybrid work has become more of the norm, and I know many companies are beginning to institute more strict return to work policies. The freedom that people have found and the ease of participation for something like running, I think, is really, really appealing. I think this is less a macroeconomics kind of point, but you're seeing participation in other sports become more and more expensive. Skiing, whatever it might be, it's becoming cost prohibitive for many consumers. Whereas run is just something you throw on shoes, you go outside, it's super accessible. And I think both, the combination of the accessibility and the mental clarity that it can provide and the relief it can provide is something that we're seeing consumers really flock to.
So you guys did this deep dive on the runner in particular. You clearly have these great running company customers on your side of things. You wanted to kind of do a deeper dive into the mentality and what the consumer's thinking. So let's walk through some of the key takeaways from your reporting and talk more about how that's helping you inform your customers as to how to build better product, how to commercialize that product, et cetera. So give me like 1 or 2 things that we can start to kind of riff on. What's like 1 or 2 takeaways from understanding the runner as you see it?
Yeah. So, we broke our research down into, I think you make a really key point there, Matt, of when we talk about the runner, it is not a uniform kind of cohort of consumers or people. There's a lot of ways to sort of segment who today's runners are. And so we really tried to create that lens as part of the research. And so some of those lenses are, maybe very obvious. There are gendered lenses. There are lenses around frequency of running. But there are also, lenses that you can think about in terms of habits and preferences for run. There are social and community runners. And, I'd be excited to come back to that in a little bit because that's an exploding segment that we're seeing and one that I think is particularly cool. There are runners that run for fitness. There are runners that are real performance and race runners. And then there are, the sort of novice or newer to run runners who are doing it much more, again, for that sort of like mental freedom and clarity. One of the trends that I'll maybe start on is just piggybacking off of what we were talking about here. In the data that in the research that we recently did, this is something that we had a feeling around, but the data is pretty stark. About 20% of runners are ones that have taken up running in the last 6 months. That's pretty staggering. And so when you think about the addressable market that brands can be communicating with, can be building community around, can ultimately be looking to sell product into, that's a sizable increase in the pool of people. But the newer runners may have a very different, and our research suggests they do, may have a very different set of criteria around how they run, around what they're looking for in a running shoe. And so it's leading to much more diversification and much more, a set of new criteria that brands need to be aware of when they think about how to build product for runners and when they think about what those runners care about.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the research right now, and I think that 1 in 5 runners who laced up their shoes for the first time in the last 6 months, and you guys call this out in the report, is like that creates a lot of, pardon the pun, running room for growth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that it's one thing to keep your current customer base happy, and the runners will be who they are, but to actually expand the field and expand the opportunity to drive sales to a broader consumer, I think is critically important. And then you think about how their behavior, it's gonna be different than the ultra marathoner, right? Who like lives and breathes and dies running. It's more like the micro runner, if I could coin a phrase. It's that one that's just dabbling in it, and they may even also wear those shoes to go do something else in the meantime. So that's a really interesting landscape that you guys have pointed out in your data.
And Matt, I think you just hit on a really, really interesting point there. When we think about this novice runner, part of what we dug into with that segment is, needs, preferences, what are they looking for, and just what are some of the trends that come along with the rise and or the emergence of that group of runners. Versatility is something that we're definitely seeing. We are hearing directly from that cohort around the desire to find a pair of shoes that they can go to work in and then run home in, or that they can go for running and then maybe go on a date and not need to have 2-3 different pairs of shoes that they're moving in and out of. Part of that's convenience, part of that's cost. If you're kind of new to the sport, you don't want to be buying a $200 super shoe and not using it super to its max if that's not what your criteria is. Beyond versatility, I think another thing that we're seeing is there's a pretty different relationship with shoe technology for this newer runner. Technology in running shoes is an area that has gotten incredible innovation over the last decade, and everything from different types of foams and upper materials and carbon plating. But for the novice runner, some of that technology is not as important. And so when you think about the costing of a shoe, when you think about price point inclusivity, when you think about the claims that you're making around technology in marketing and trying to appeal to that consumer, it's a pretty different approach that's going to be required. We've done some digging here, and claims that the novice runner is really, claims that are really resonating with that group are claims that are very explicit, that are very clear. It's much less aspirational. And so that's even flowing that down through the naming conventions for some brands of just, creating shoes that are what they say they are and making it very, very easy for a consumer to know what they're getting.
Yeah, I think that's so critical. Clear communication is in a very noisy era is so vitally important. I want to get to channel in just a second, but I want to hold that thought at like where are runners going to get their shoes and talk more about the versatility for just a second, because
of
course. Talked about it, Matt. It's just kind of illustrating what is a broader trend in footwear, to be honest with you. If you look back to even our import numbers from 2012 on, we started importing in at that time period, and 99% of shoes sold in the U.S. are made overseas. So imports are a great barometer for stylistic, preferences, if you will, amongst our consumers. And starting in 2012, moving forward, we saw leather take a back seat to knit textile upper shoes right across the spectrum. And there's been no looking back. There's been no turning back. And so we're in this environment where versatility is valued across the board, not just because of cost, as you said, and convenience, which are two critically important variables when consumers are buying and using shoes, but it's also cultural barriers have lowered, meaning I can literally host a board meeting in sneakers, leave there, go to my church and worship for an hour in sneakers, leave there and go to a backyard barbecue, leave there and go for a run, all the same pairs of shoes.
Totally.
Maybe I need to reverse it. I don't want to go to a barbecue and then run. Maybe I flip that. But nevertheless, that versatility is something that's not just in the running space. But the fact is, if you want versatility and you want to be able to run while doing those other things, you're going to be wearing the versatile shoes that you pick are going to be the ones that have the features that support you when you're going for a run specifically. And that's why if you're at an airport, I encourage our listeners. I was in LAX a couple months ago. Look at people's feet in an airport and see what's trending. And it is nothing but running shoes right now. And it speaks to what your research is really bearing out.
Yeah. One thing I'd add to that, I think that's spot on, and I love that airport analogy. I do think it's fascinating people watching at airports, and certainly when you're looking at product, you're going to wear for comfort, you're going to wear for versatility. So I think that's that point is spot on. One of them, I mean, the massive. This is not going to be surprising to any of your listeners, but one of the massive trends that's also playing out that's of a similar vein is the blending of lifestyle and performance in a way that really didn't exist 5-10 years ago.
Yeah.
And you're seeing consumers really care about that, especially younger consumers. Gen Z sees less and less of a difference between performance and lifestyle, and that not that they don't think that performance is still a critical component that they will shop on. It's massively important, but from a styling perspective, they want that blending of sort of that lifestyle look and feel. And when you look at what's selling, whether it's in third-party retail or from brands' own channels, and it's just a stream of it feels like a voracious stream of kind of past icons that were previous lifestyle shoes that are now coming back in vogue. And then it's also flipped in reverse. You're seeing ASICS have incredible success for some of their running shoes from the 2000s and even 1990s that are now hugely popular as almost like pure lifestyle plays. So that blending is fascinating to us. And I think from a creativity standpoint, as a manufacturer and brand, it's kind of a very cool spot to be playing in right now.
It's really cool. What I love about your reporting, Matt, is your focus on even a color preference, right? And not a lot of like reports on market segments get down to the creative side of things, or what colorways are really resonating with whatever segment of the industry that we're looking at. And I can tell you that you have your core colors, your progressive colors, a mix and match, maybe a balance between a few here and there, and then your solid colors. The running shoes in particular, I'll bring Hoka into the conversation. I feel like Hoka, anytime I see a pair of Hokas, it looks like a new one I've never seen before. Like the variability in the colorways that they present is off the charts. And so I've been to the Hoka, the main Hoka store in Santa Barbara near Decker's headquarters. I've seen what they offer there. I was in a small mom and pop shop in Stowe, Vermont 2 weeks ago, and they had Hokas in there, and the colorways were totally different than what I had seen before, which was different than what you see in Dick's Sporting Goods, which is different than what you see online. And so there's a lot of variability in what colors people prefer. And so I'm really, really grateful that you guys took the time to go and seek that out, because not everyone does that in their research. And I think it would be super helpful for our listeners to download the report and understand better kind of what color schemes runners are really into these days.
Yeah, I mean, would love, if any listener wants to access the report, MakerSights.com. It's fairly easy to navigate to, but we'll also, Matt, whatever you need to make that available to your audience, happy to. And yeah, the point on color is very true. As we broke down the cohorts, there was a real diversity of preference around, really bold, progressive colors. Obviously for certain segments of the market, the triple whites, the triple blacks, the sort of like core colors they're always going to be popular. I think where this type of intel is really, really valuable for hopefully for brands and manufacturers is as you're thinking about building out your lines and thinking about what are the incremental styles beyond white, black, gray, navy that are really going to drive incremental demand. The kind of cohorts that we cut our research by, you'll get a really good sense of their preferences, and it'll lead to hopefully some interesting intel around how you fill out lines, and when you're thinking about, again, your experienced performance runner versus your outdoors specialist versus your beginner and novice. There's cuts of all of that.
Yeah, as I look at this chart, and again, I encourage people, we'll put a link in the description of the episode, people will download this, and I look at core colors and solid colors, that's kind of where I operate. But traditionally, I'm kind of a, grays, blues, blacks, whites kind of guy. But I will allow some splash of color into my footwear, particularly on the running side of things, because performance is like really actually more important to me than the colorway. But at the same time, my tolerance for stepping out a little bit outside of my comfort zone as a more buttoned up kind of dude is, I have a little bit more leeway with my footwear as I go for a run. So I think it's a critical thing to kind of point to.
Totally.
Let me pivot over to channel. Talk to us about what you found about where runners are going to buy their shoes. Kind of what are some critical highlights there?
Yeah, so the primary outlets or channels that consumers are gravitating towards, the two biggest, not surprisingly, brand specific retail, retail stores, and then your kind of general sporting goods retailers are the two main ones. I think where the data gets really interesting is as you cut below that. I think that will surprise very few people. But when you cut below that, there are some trends again at the cohort level that are fascinating. One of the ones that I think is most interesting is when you look at Gen Z shoppers. There is a real reversion back to local run shops, and I think that's a testament to their desire to support local communities, to their desire. I think TBD on whether we'll see like a real flocking back to like the mall era of the 2000s and late 90s. But the Gen Z wants to be in local stores. They want to be touching product. They want to be feeling it. They want to be interacting with experts who truly know the space. And so, again, someone, I know, Matt, you're a passionate runner, as someone who kind of digs the nitty gritty here myself. It's pretty awesome to see that stand out from the data. And again, as brands are thinking about how to attract new consumers, Gen Z is a consumer group that, almost every brand is trying to get a better read on their preferences, how they shop, what they're looking for, and the return to importance of the local run shops a pretty exciting one.
I think it is exciting, Matt. And I think for those who are interested in like some data geeks out there like to look at the crosstabs of different research and different reporting. As I think through as a layperson, at least as it relates to what you all have published, you have 20% of runners having just cranked up in the last 6 months, right? Well, if you're new to running and you don't know where to start, a specialty running store is the perfect place to start. So in my mind, I'm thinking it was kind of hiding in plain view. It's kind of a no duh moment for me. But if there's a lot more entrance into the community, if you will, of running over the last 6 months, they're smart. They're going to want to go to the place that will get you on a treadmill, look at your gait, look at how you pronate, make recommendations on the type of shoe you might need, rather than just do it online or roll into a big box retailer, which serves a purpose within our industry very effectively. But having that extra touch, that extra TLC when it comes to picking out what shoes are best, maybe there's a there. Maybe there's a reason why there's more Gen Zers pivoting, because one, they're maybe the largest cohort now starting to run as they age into it, and they are also going to need more guidance as it comes from the specialty running stores. Is that a wrong assumption?
You're absolutely correct.
Nailed it.
You're using. I think you're using the perfect word around guidance. Another data point to add in here, and I don't want to overwhelm folks who are listening with
they can handle it.
And figures. Okay, perfect. But an interesting data point that complements this narrative and story is when you're thinking about brand loyalty, and this is maybe even more true of Gen Z, but it holds pretty uniformly across all the cohorts we looked at. About 40% of consumers consider themselves very loyal to run brands that they prefer. But that leaves 60% of the market that's either somewhat loyal to not loyal at all and very open to shopping for the best of for whatever they're looking for. That's a huge portion of the market. And so when you're thinking about whether it's run specialty or even how you market yourself on your own site or in big box, but particularly back to run specialty, that point you made around being able to be super clear in what your brand is standing for, what your technology is standing for, why your product is better or among the best in that broad competitive set. And it is a big competitive set at this point that consumers are having to pick from. It's you have a big market of people that are actively open to shopping from you, even if they've never bought from you in the past. And so that opportunity should be motivating and exciting, but it does come down to, can you be really, really crisp in talking about what the benefits of your product are vis-a-vis your competition?
Yeah, that's a great point. And in the specialty running space, your sales reps are critically important. Your regional sales reps
exactly.
are dealing with the Fleet Feets of the world and the Pacers of the world. These are East Coast specialty running stores, and whatever's happening out on the West Coast and everywhere in between. I think it's so critical that brands, and they know this, but if you're an emerging running brand or you're looking to get into the space, or you're a heritage company that's looking to expand into running because of the growth there, having that direct connection with your sales team and especially running operators is so critically important, so that they can be educated on how to sell your product and how to recommend your product to people in need.
Totally, and not to make a shameless plug for us, but to make
That's
a
what we're
shameless
here
plug
for, my friend. Go for it.
For where we can be helpful to the run community and to the broader footwear community. And I think you're so right about the importance of arming sales teams and people who work in your e-com merchandising with being able to like really know the features, the benefits. Something that I think brands still have an opportunity to really be more bold in is being able to learn from the consumer and the consumer perception, because there can be a little bit of an echo chamber that can happen when you're meeting only internally and you're relying on kind of your design team and your merchandising team and your sales team to all kind of interact, and marketing to interact and coalesce around that message of what is this key franchise standing for and how do we want to market it, and being able to get that voice to the consumer throughout that creation process, that go to market process, and to be able to validate, hey, this is what we think the benefits of our tech is, and is that resonating with our consumers? Are they seeing it the same way? That can just save you so much time and money, and ultimately lead to a much more productive relationship with your consumers on the back end.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Matt. As we close out the conversation, I would be remiss if I didn't check in on a couple key themes that are, I think, really important to what you all do for the industry. And I'm thinking about understanding how a brand moves from product creation to the go-to market process. And I'm thinking about the blend of technology and retail expertise that you all have. And I know you have even a case study with Hoka on the transport. I'm kind of sampling things here. It's kind of the speed round as we close out, but hit on some of these themes so that people understand what you all really do and the value you really provide to your customers and to the industry.
Yeah, so our real specialty is providing very, very fast, very relevant information and consumer intelligence specific to your product and assortment. And so, think about, you're producing a shoe, you're thinking about a holistic line and how to make it as productive as possible. You're thinking about, going back to our conversation 2 minutes ago, how to bring a new product to market in a way that's going to drive really productive selling conversations with your key accounts. Where we specialize is being able to collect really relevant consumer data that helps validate and inform some of those big decisions. What we've learned, we've been around about 8 to 10 years, and in that time we've learned a few hard truths, which have been super. We as a business that believes it's really important to listen to and get feedback from your consumers, we've tried to do the same thing with our customers, who are our brands, and a few truths have rung out from the years of learning that we've done. Despite the fact that it takes 18 to 24 months, and if you're really, really fast, maybe 12 months to bring a product to market from creation to shelf, the windows in which data like ours can be helpful and impactful are very, very small. It's, you have a sample in and you need to make a decision, sometimes as fast as 3 to 5 days from now on how deep are we going to buy, or is this going to make it into the line, or is it not? And so the speed with which you need to be able to collect insights is very, very important. The other, outside of speed, the other thing that we've learned is, 10 years ago when we started this business, most brands really lacked for data. And, when you listen to CEOs or C-suites talk about their strategies, it was, we want to be more consumer informed. We want to be getting more data. It was data. I think at this point, we're almost in the inverse of that, where there's so much data that's out there, not just out there and available, but that's sitting within brands' CRM and data systems and sales systems, and it's almost like noise at this point. And what do you listen to, and how do you take action off of what at this point is like a surplus of data? And so not only do you have tight windows that you need to fit that data story into, but you really need to be able to craft a narrative that's digestible and that brands can really action on. And so that's what we really, we're a technology company and have a platform that allows for very, very quick, very digestible acting on information. But we also supplement that with a real services arm and an expertise. And that services arm is comprised of people who come from this industry and who come from research backgrounds. And the whole point of those team members is to really make the insights that we're gleaning for you as actionable as possible, and to make that something that you can take into a meeting and make a quick decision on and feel really good about that decision.
That's really, really smart. I mean, we had an exec summit earlier this year in DC. We hosted at the Library of Congress, where it's the largest library in the world, right? And my message at the time was there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. We have as much information you could possibly have at your fingertips in the history of humankind. Doesn't mean we're smarter or wiser. The wisdom comes with what do you do with that information? It sounds like you guys sit right in the middle of those two things to help guide companies to take the information and build wisdom out on the decision-making process. So I want to congratulate you on your nearly decade of service to the industry, and ask you one last question. What's the best way for folks, other than go to MakerSights.com, but are there other things that folks can do to get a hold of you if they are interested in more information?
Yeah, they absolutely can reach out. If you're okay with me sharing my email, I'll do that now. It's sure. Matt, M-A-T-T, at MakerSights, MakerSights.com. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. I'll try and keep a presence there and post about things I'm seeing across the industry, and would be delighted to have a conversation.
That's awesome, Matt. Well, thank you for coming in and letting me nerd out on running and running data and the running consumer, because you guys have exclusive insights into what the consumer is thinking from a running perspective, and I really appreciate you helping me out today.
It was a great conversation, and love the work that you and the team are doing, and excited to be part of this conversation.
Cool. Folks, this has been another exciting edition of the Shoe and Show program, where we are covering the ins and outs of all things footwear. If you're thinking about it, if you're in the industry and you have an issue in the industry, chances are we've covered it probably 15 times over at this point, over 9 years of content. But that being said, check out our entire catalog at shoeandshow.com. Make sure you subscribe so that we are pushing out this episode no matter where you get your podcast. So conversation between two Matts on running would be hanging out there on your phone without you even having to seek it out. So make sure you subscribe, and we hope that you'll join us again next week for another exciting edition. Until then, Shoe and Show is out.
Shoe In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.